Maybe too early to share this with you because we don't know each other very well yet, but I do believe in dancing during service. So if you want to go in the back and just, back and forth. Don't judge me for doing it up here. Thank you, Dwight. Thank you, Quiet. That was beautiful. The reading today, are you going to start recording, Ms. Ashley? Fantastic. It is my preference to actually record sermons and the reading that I use before them to be posted so that in case anybody would like to see them, they are available. So the reading today is from the Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison Reed. Anybody familiar with that name? Mark is an amazing human being, universalist in his theology, and he is a historian and a chronicler of the African American experience in Unitarian Universalism. So this is a poem he wrote which is entitled A Riff. I came as rain, a droplet from the sky, splashing, returning to sisters and brothers, a trickle, and then a rivulet, a cascading stream following the course of least resistance. Pond, rapids, lake, river, growing deep and powerful, placid and powerful, flowing into the ocean and a silence that is not the end. I came as a cloud, shading those I loved, dew that glistened and evaporated, tears coursing down waters of joy and gratitude. Life's precipitation can't be captured or contained, only kissed. I read in the newspaper this morning about Massachusetts town, and if I don't pronounce it correctly, you can correct me. Woburn, is that right? And in that article, it spoke of the fact that the folks in Woburn are concerned because while their ordinances allow for welcoming migrants and folks who seek refuge, they're not prepared for what has happened. And I realized as I read that, and as my heart had been reflecting on where are the limits of our capacity to love? Where are the limits where we stop hearing the call of what is deepest and most precious to us and turn away? I understand resources are often limited, and these are not considered to be priorities for government particularly. And yet, there is a need. There is a desperate need for many, many, many reasons. There's a need for understanding. There is a need for education. There is a need to recognize the part our nation has played and continues to play in the ebb and flow of people seeking asylum. And I think about how uncomfortable it can be sometimes in our Unitarian Universalist congregations to even talk about love. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Hallmark Channel, especially Hallmark Christmas movies. That's another confession. It's probably too early to make, but here we are. And much as I love those movies, love is something deeper than that. Deeper and actually part of who we are as a Unitarian Universalist community, and that's what I want to turn to today. explore those limits for us and whether we can't push those limits or maybe even set them aside when we look at together, because we will be in the next 2 years, we'll be looking together at some of the questions that are really hard to answer. Do we fix a roof or hire a faith formation professional? Or both? Do we use our time and treasure and the space and the rooms and the capacities we have to answer the call of our deepest loves? Or do we think about the generations ahead who will need, as surely as we need, a place like this that accepts our doubts and that accepts us and holds us as we grow in spirit and challenge these questions together? About 340,000 years ago, in the mountains known, the southern part of what is today known as Africa, there was a community that had very specific rituals for laying to rest those who had died. They carried them up the mountain and through a long and narrow and dangerous tunnel down into the mountain, into a very large open chamber. And they laid them gently on the floor of that chamber, head to foot, in a very deliberate, in this place where they would not be disturbed by predators, where they would be safe. And then they made designs on the wall of this cave. Now, the anthropologists and the archaeologists and the scientists who discovered, who first found in the modern era, who first found these remains, were very excited. And it's not that long ago. I don't remember the date, but it's less than 10 years ago. And they did their tests, and they did the studies that are so exciting to read about. And I am not a scientist. I'm not here in that guise. But what they discovered, and they did reconstructions of what these beings might have looked like, and what they concluded was that these beings did not fulfill the criteria for being human. Which raises a question that's probably better answered at another time. But I was deeply excited by this because I love that kind of stuff. In another life, I would have been an anthropologist. But I was excited because I realized that what I have always believed is true. Oh, I shouldn't touch the microphone. That somewhere in the way we are shaped and have been shaped through our ancestors for many hundreds of thousands of years, we are wired to love and honor one another. We are wired to seek meaning together. What is the meaning of these mysteries that thinking we didn't understand a million years ago and we don't understand today? Why? What drives us to come together on a sweltering Sunday in the beginning of September to be together and seek meaning? I'm going to call it love. Spiritual love. Love that has no limit. Love that we learn to explore and live slowly, that we forget often and need to be reminded of often. In the year 2000, the Black feminist and educator Bell Hooks wrote that she needed us as a people to return to love because what she saw 23 years ago was something she called a spirit a wilderness of spirit so intense we may never find our way home again. She died in 2021, and I wonder what she would write today about how far our people have turned away from love. Especially, she said, young people she observed were growing more cynical. Remember Tina Turner's song, What's Love Got to Do with It? It's a secondhand emotion. Y'all are old enough to remember that. Beloveds, many things have challenged our capacity to love. In most recent memory, not only the chaos and our political life and our civic life, but the devastation of a COVID-19 epidemic that has challenged and continues to challenge our capacity to love, our willingness to put love first, our willingness to listen for the questions that our deepest loves ask of us. Remember that isolation? Remember how quiet the world got? And it may get again. Cases, as we know, are rising. The first message I will share with you today is to recognize, to say to you that it is okay to grieve. It is okay to shake our fists at whatever being or lack of being controls these things, to do like the ancient prophets of the lamentation of their laments would say, hey God, what are you doing? Stop. It is okay to be sad and angry because communities of faith have lost a lot of certainty, a lot of our rituals, a lot of our time together. I don't know about you, but when sort of COVID started to let up, I realized that I had a little bit of trouble knowing how to talk to people, knowing how far to stand. It was really difficult and weird. Trauma experts tell us that it could be 5 or 10 years before congregations like this one really process everything. So even as I say to you, take the time, talk to someone here and say, I'm grieving. This has been lost. Maybe the way things were done has been lost. Maybe we need to reimagine through the lenses of our deepest loves how things could be or should be in these new circumstances. Our neighbors in Dedham, Massachusetts in 1636, just as they incorporated their town, there were 30 families that got together because they needed and wanted a church, and they wanted to talk about that. Do you guys know this story? Yes? I'll make it quick. They held weekly meetings to discuss what they wanted. And luckily, we have records of those meetings. We have minutes from those meetings, so we know what they talked about, and we know what the rules were. So the meeting moved from home to home every week, and the host would set the question, the issue for the meeting, what they would talk about. And the rules were that they could have discussion, maybe vigorous discussion. They could disagree with one another, but they could not be disrespectful and unloving to one another. What did they not talk about? The Bible. What did they not talk about? Hellfire and damnation. I mean, these were Puritans, for crying out loud. Instead, one of our informal historians, the Reverend Alice Blair Wesley, has counted the number of times that things come up in the notes. And guess what was the number one thing? love, affection. What they wanted to figure out was how their church could be a force for good in their community. They not only wanted to live together and support and love one another, they wanted to be a source of good and love in their community. That is what being a free church meant through what is now the oldest and very first Unitarian Universalist congregation. And so the second key message I share with you this morning is this. As we consider these decisions and these questions that will come up, and I hope that we will continue to have meetings like the folks in Dedham did, that we hold up that lens of love. Putting aside for the moment the logistics of doing such things, does the decision, does the answer meet the criteria for being a force for good in the community and communities we are part of? Or is the decision, or is the solution coming from a place of anxiety? It's going to be both. And we here, this is what makes us different from maybe another kind of social organization. We get to, at least for an hour on Sunday mornings, we get to live in that place where we are called to be something greater together than we could ever imagine alone. And so I say to you, we are the love people. It is our heritage, it is our birthright, it is the gift we have to share as, Lord help me, as imperfectly as we do. Those very people who had those civil conversations in Dedham were part of a colonizing force that wiped out and took away the land of the people who had been living here for millennia. Half of the people who became eventually Unitarian advocated for chattel slavery. Women did not become vested and honored spiritual leaders in our faith until the 1980s. We have made our share of mistakes. So I invite us to be patient with our ancestors and with one another. Because hopefully 50 years from now, our faith descendants will know better than we do. And the call of love will take them to even deeper and better places. My friend D.C. Fortune says, love wins. And if love hasn't won, it isn't over. Amen, beloveds. Ashe, and blessed be.